Welcome back to Website and TV. I'm Gemma Houghton. Today I'm joined by Jessie Woods, who's SEO analyst at Kayak. I'm going to be talking about international SEO. Hi Jessie.
Right.
Thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
So firstly, how many markets is Kayak active in?
Currently, Kayak is active in 36 markets worldwide.
And how many languages do you cover on your website?
20 languages.
Okay, so obviously there's a lot of different challenges that come with SEO, and one of them is languages. When you're dealing with global languages such as English and Spanish, which we'll have in multiple countries, how do you handle that from an SEO point of view?
Yeah, so for example, if you're having a website in the United States and you want to expand to the UK, some people think it's just as easy as, because both are English-speaking markets, that you could just take the English from the US site, for example, and have that exact same text on your UK site, and that it will work. And the problem there is that if you do stuff like this, then you'll discover that you're using words on your site that nobody's searching for. So you miss out on a lot of easy traffic in that way. So you really have to localize your language for the market that you're targeting. So for example, we know that in the United States, when people rent cars, they search for car rental, whereas in the UK, people search for car hire. So you really need to find out what people in that market that you're targeting are using.
And what tools do you use to do that? I guess it's mainly Google Keyword Planner and keyword research.
Yeah, there's quite a few tools that I find helpful for doing international SEO. Search metrics, for example, and SEMrush and Systrix are really useful for seeing how you perform, especially in terms of keyword rankings against your different competitors. They're also very useful for identifying new keyword and topic opportunities. You mentioned Google Keyword Planner, which is probably the most useful because you get a really good idea of how many searches there are for different keywords in your different markets, which is very useful. And then Ad Preview tool from Google is also very useful to see how search results look in the country that you're targeting. And also to see what kind of content your competitors are using to rank in those markets, so you can have the right focus.
And how often do you kind of use these tools to look at the same kind of information? So how often would you kind of check your competitors' performance, say, against keywords, or how regularly should you be looking at that information?
I'm checking things like this every week. I think anybody who's successful with their websites are constantly addicted to checking the performance often, but that also means checking the performance of your competitors, right? And these tools make it very easy to see this. They show they often show your performance in terms of rankings or search visibility over time.
So it's really easy to identify if there's any changes or...
Exactly.
And we can't talk about international SEO without talking about hreflang, which is obviously a really important aspect for many websites. What do you find are the biggest challenges about implementing it, and what do you need to do to make sure you kind of have it accurately working?
Yeah, I think the first point to make is that people should understand exactly what hreflang tags are for. So it's pretty straightforward. You should use alternate hreflang tags if you're trying to signal to Google, for example, which country or language you're trying to target with your website, so they can serve your website to the right audience. But yeah, some of the most important things you have to remember: if you add an hreflang tag on one page, there always has to be a return tag on that other page. Otherwise, it's going to be invalid. So page A on site A, if it points to page B on site B, there has to be a return tag pointing back to page A on site A. It's also important when you use hreflang tags, you can identify the language in the code and optionally the region, but you always have to have the language code. And some people forget this, or they just use the wrong language code because they just assume, for example, for Korea, that it's KR for the language and KR for the region, but it's actually KO for the language and KR for the region. So there's links in Google's guidelines, for example, where you can check that. And the last thing that I think is important to note here, because we're talking about international SEO, hreflang tags are only recognized by Google and Yandex. So if you're targeting other search engines, it's really important to look into their requirements. Like Bing, for example, doesn't recognize hreflang tags. They use language meta tags.
Yeah, so that's something that you could really find yourself suffering for if you look at your site and suddenly wonder why you're showing up in the wrong language in Bing. It's probably because you haven't done your geo-targeting correctly for that. And with hreflang, there's also a challenge with paginated pages. How do you have to handle that?
Yeah, this is an issue that I think affects a lot of bigger websites. So some people, they add hreflang tags to all of their pages, but they don't think about even going and checking, how it's implemented on their paginated pages. So it could happen that especially if you have some kind of automated way to add hreflang tags, that when you add them to your paginated pages, so you have a series of pages, page 1, page 2, page 3, all of your hreflang tags might be pointing to page 1 on your other websites, which will cause a ton of hreflang tag errors to pop up, which is chaos. So it's important, if you add hreflang tags to your paginated pages, to make sure, for example, that page 2 points to the equivalent page 2 on your other website.
And this is the main challenge with hreflang, just the quantity of links going backwards and forwards makes it very easy to make mistakes, I guess. And,
yeah, for sure.
And quite hard to spot where the errors are as well.
Definitely.
And then something else that matters a lot for, well, any SEO, but of course international as well, is internal linking on your website. What are the main things to consider from an international perspective when linking between sites?
Yeah, sure. So, for example, at Kayak, almost every one of our pages, we always give the user an opportunity to visit our other country and language websites. A lot of international sites do this, but when we do this, we try to send you to the exact same page on that other website. So if you're on kayak.com, you're on the Munich hotels page, and you click on the little Germany flag, the nice little Germany flag we have there, we'll send you to the kayak.de page, and you'll be on the Munich hotels page on that website.
Yeah.
Now, the reason why we send you to the exact same page is because this is the most relevant to the page that you were just on. And some sites don't link to the exact same page on their other website. They just link to the home page always, which I recommend against doing. Just looking at it from the user's point of view, it's not the most relevant page. But also, if you link to the home page, this is going to be the page that's crawled most by Googlebot. So I feel like if you do that, it's a missed opportunity to have this deeper, more relevant page get crawled more and maybe index faster.
So it's really important from both a user and a search engine perspective, this kind of linking to this specific page.
Yeah, definitely.
And then obviously that's internal linking, external links matter as well. What are your kind of recommendations of the best ways now to build links for your website, from external websites?
Well, if you're earning links from external websites, you should definitely try to earn links from websites that are targeting the same country market that you're targeting. We know that links from topic relevant websites have a positive impact on your search engine rankings for that topic. I think it only makes sense that if you're targeting the UK, for example, a link from a topic relevant UK targeted site is going to have a much better impact on your search engine performance in UK search results than, for example, a link from a French website. Just looking at it from a user perspective, if you're reading an online travel article in French and it links out to other useful resources, you're the user, reading stuff in French, and then you click on a link and end up on an English page, it's going to be a pretty terrible user experience. So it's just the most logical approach to get links from websites that are targeting the same market that you're
And
targeting.
again, it's both for the search engine and the user. It's kind of benefits both of those.
Definitely.
So of course you mentioned with the internal linking, you link to the equivalent page, and with things like, Munich hotels, you're always going to have that page in all the languages. But is it kind of the case that you will always just replicate every page from, say, your .com site into all the languages you target, or do you tend to have to look at that and decide which pages you would want to replicate in those languages?
I definitely recommend not always just having the exact same pages on all of your websites. I think here it's important to look at your user data, if you have it, or do really good market research to actually identify in each country market or language market what pages are people actually interested in. Probably maybe the best thing is to, if you want to add a lot of the same pages, do this for a time, and then do an audit of your site. See if you have a situation in which maybe 10% of your pages bring 90% of the traffic, right? At which point you have to say, maybe some of these pages aren't useful. Look into that, and maybe you identify that, for example, people aren't interested in this small town in Germany having a hotels page for that on the US website, for example, and look at it that way. And
also another important kind of development is this mobile first index from Google. What impact is that going to have for brands with big international sites? What should they be doing to prepare for that and make sure they're going to have the same visibility?
Yeah, so we know with Google's announcement around the whole mobile first indexing that they said they'll primarily be looking at the mobile version of a website to determine how the pages of that site should rank in its index. So if you are like us at Kayak and you have a separate desktop version and a separate mobile website, and you only have your hreflang tags, for example, on your desktop site, you're going to need to also add those to your mobile website so that Google can still make sure after this mobile first update that they're still serving your pages to the right audience.
So more hreflang fun for everybody to have.
Yeah.
Great. Well, it was really interesting to talk to you. Thanks for sharing, Jesse.
Thanks for having me.